I just tell the truth, and telling the truth is crazy in a world full of lies. If you mix brilliance with bravery, that we can ignite something. Even this conversation alone can ignite the people.
The time is now to express and for people to believe in themselves. The time is now for it to be okay to be great. People in this world shun people for being great, for being a bright color, for standing out. But the time is now to be okay to be the greatest you.
Hey guys, what's up? It's your girl Kelly, and we are back with another video. If this is your first time checking the channel out, please go ahead and hit that subscribe button. If you're into true crime stories, news, and politics, we get into it all on this channel. And if you are a returning viewer or subscriber, thank you as always for being a friend. Please interact with the video, like it if you like it, give us a comment. It really does help me out, and I very much appreciate each and every one of you guys that is here with me listening to this very show. So today, guys, I wanted to get on here. It's been a little bit, I've been lagging in my video updates. Last week I was on vacation, so that's the reason for the lag for last week. But should pick up from here on out if you're interested, if you are if you're a regular listener, and I appreciate you guys very, very much for doing that. So I wanted to get on here and just discuss some of the news topics that have been trending over the last couple weeks. Some of these are a little bit older. Some of these I have been kind of hanging on to in order to do this show, because the left has actually finally begun to eat itself. And this problem is not actually just concentrated on the left. There is some instances of this happening on both ends of the political spectrum. And I find it to be fascinating, because I think this is where we finally will start to see some of the, the walls coming down, and we will finally start to actually get to some of the truth, hopefully, in the society. So let's start off with this right here.
But I think the left is starting to eat itself, Megan. So you've got, we had Pride in London on Saturday, just gone. And the Just Spoilt Brats, or the Just Stop Oil Brigade, they were out and they were protesting against a Pride parade because it's sponsored by woke capitalism, essentially, who are all on board with this ESG stuff. And
so wait, let me just get this straight. So you've got a Pride parade happening that has a corporate sponsor.
First of all, if you've watched this channel before, you guys know the climate activists, the oil haters, the tree huggers, whatever you want to call them, they are like the bane of my existence, and in a large, ever-loving problem that this society faces is getting those people to come to their senses. And this was one of the most prime examples, and this is what kind of made me want to do this video in the first place, was that it's amazing that now we are seeing different sections of the left start to go against each other. And he describes it here perfectly. He's saying that basically the oil protesters, who would normally be on the same side as the gays and the Pride people, they're clashing heads because the oil people don't want the Pride people sponsored by sections of the media, or like different businesses and different sectors, to sponsor their events. Somehow there's a clash of the titans here. You just love to see it if you're me, okay?
So I think it was Coca-Cola, and the Just Stop Oil activists targeted the Pride Parade because, not because they were doing anything to the environment, but because they had Coca-Cola as a sponsor. Yes, that is the left eating its own.
And they were sponsored by, one of the Pride sponsors was an airline. So that was the argument, that if you can take cash from these corporates. But I think that's where it's going to start to be torn down, because a lot of the left, I imagine the somersaults going through their minds, the mental arithmetic of which diversity box, which identity box should I care about right now? Should it be the climate Greta death cult? Or should it be the Pride, I'm obsessed with getting into schools and indoctrinating children cult?
There's a push up in North by Justin Trudeau in Canada to make it Pride Summer. Admiral Rachel Levine, who is a man masquerading as a woman, says it needs to be Pride Season. So it's going to go on and on. And I've been asking all along,
and it's funny because the Pride people seem, they're coming to clash with a lot of their own side. And it's finally coming to a head. The fact that they have pushed as far as they have, the fact that they have really rubbed people the wrong way. There was that group that was like going about Pride saying, they're queer, they're here, they're coming for our children. Like, they're really pushing their luck. And now there's this like weird push for all of these different things in the media for trans people to be, you know, represented in. So I want to jump from here to Tucker Carlson's monologue on Twitter about Rachel Levine and or should I say Richard Levine and his idiocracy. Okay, I'm just gonna let Tucker handle it because he really tickled me with this little bit that he did here.
The athletic program can claim at least one important footnote to history. In 1975, its football roster contained two names that you will recognize even now, Mark Milley and Richard Levine. Milley is now the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff. Levine, of course, is our country's most famous admiral. Both transitioned late in life into overweight middle-aged women. Both wound up working as high-level officials in the Joe Biden administration. Their teammates
Not they both transitioned into overweight women. Okay.
at the all-boys school in Boston probably wouldn't have predicted any of that. Here's what Rick Levine looks like now from a video he just posted on Instagram.
Hello, my name is Admiral Rachel Levine,
God.
and I have the honor of being the Assistant Secretary for Health at the United States Department of Health and Human Services. Happy Pride. Happy Pride Month, and actually, let's declare it a summer of pride. Happy
And let's fucking not. So, yeah, that's, you give them an inch and they want the whole freaking mile and a half. They want more than a mile. They want, you know, the length of the U.S. southern border. They want to wrap themselves around the entire globe and envelop people in their gay agenda. And it's just, you know, it's a no. Okay? It's a no. Rick from Boston, as Tucker would so aptly call you. If you know me, you know that this just like warms my very heart. I say run these people over. When you're in the road, I don't see you down there. I'm the driver. This is ridiculous. And you know, in this circumstance here, it's as crazy as it sounds. I have to side with the gays. Get the fork out of the road. I don't care how much I dislike the cause of the like pride push and like, you know, I have no problem with gay people. I have no problem even with trans people. It's the push on everyone else and the push on the children that I have a major problem with and that is causing all of this friction. But in this scenario here, I can officially say, get the fork up out of the road or like get run over by a car. Because that's just where I'm at this point. The disruption of everyone else's lives for a group of under 10 people's cause, it's got to stop. I mean, that is absolute. At least the Pride people have like a gang with them. You know, they have like a large group that they've been able to like accumulate, and they've been able to like get on their side. You know, they've got like a cause that people actually want to stand with. These like climate activists, it's usually like a group of like 2, 3, or maybe in some cases like up to 10 to 15 people. Never any more than that. You can never, and they all look exactly how you would imagine them to look. They look like crazy people. And they look like, I don't even know what. Just imagine in your mind what a tree-hugging climate activist who would put themselves in the path of traffic in order to stop people from drilling oil, because that makes sense, because it's a burden on everyone. So that's my main issue with these oil and climate activists. You know, to see them go head to head, it just, like I said, it just, oh man, this just like, this gave me hope. It really did. I had to share it with you guys. So that's that. You know, the Just Stop Oil people, they have to be stopped. Okay, so I will include these articles if you guys care to read them. There they are. You know, beautiful stuff, beautiful stuff. So let's move on and let's focus right back on the, you know, Pride Mafia, the LGBTQ alphabet soup, you know, crazies that are actively trying to take over this country and push their agenda much more, you know, I would say much more successfully than the climate activists, and just as annoying. Well, not quite, but almost just as annoying, but more in your face, okay? And I wanted to share with you guys this clip of Megyn Kelly. I want to share this clip right here with you guys, and strap on your seatbelts and be prepared for this, because the topic that she's about to cover, it's truly appalling, and it's shocking to know that our government and some of the agencies within our government, like the CDC, what it is that they're getting ready to push onto you, okay? So let's just make this bigger, and let's give it a rip.
Biden's, the CDC under Joe Biden right now, the CDC has issued guidance. This is from the actual CDC website, offering advice to men who want to masquerade as women on how to chest feed babies. The CDC is saying it's possible. This is from their website, quoting, "Can transgender parents who have had breast surgery breastfeed or chest feed their infants?" Yes. And then goes on, "These families may need help with the following." One page containing the guidance is located on their infant and young child feeding in emergencies toolkit. And they actually go on to say an individual does not need to have given birth to breastfeed or to chest feed. There is nothing there about the significant risks to a baby, not to mention torture of an infant trying to suckle at the fake breast of a man who 9 times out of 10 will be getting off sexually from having the child suck his nipples.
Well,
this is the CDC. It's disgusting.
And she's exactly on point with that. I mean, I could not have said it better myself. It is depraved. And the fact that our government agencies have the audacity to publish something like this, when we've seen it before. There was on Instagram this person, this man who has been going viral and been making blog sites. People have been reposting this person, who is a man who has supposedly gotten gender reassignment surgery and has gotten some surgeries to make himself look like a woman, and has been claiming to be pregnant on Instagram. This is how far they're willing to go, okay? And then they want to push men having babies suck fake chemically laced milk from their man boobs, okay? It's disgusting, and it is deplorable. It is absolutely detestable that there would be any support for anything like this. And if you are a liberal or leftist or whatever you are, if you are watching this, please let me know if this is something that you actually agree with or co-sign, because I don't see how any sane person can be on board with this. Anybody pushing this idea to allow a man, it's unnatural. I don't care if you can do something with drugs. That doesn't matter. Okay, we're playing God here, and it is an abomination. And it is going to lead to the end of our society and the end of, just civilization as we know it. Because you cannot do so many unnatural, disgusting things just because you can, just because maybe it's made possible through medicine or whatever. I don't give a shit. It's unnatural. It's disgusting. It is absolutely a crime against nature, in my opinion, honestly. And we are playing with fire.
It's disgusting. I'm glad you went there, Megan. This is a gateway drug to the normalization of pedophilia, is what it is.
Amen.
I mean, the idea of a man wanting, and we have to say that. I mean, this is not about, nourishing a child or giving, any sort of love and compassion. This is someone who's getting on some sort of sexual kink because of a child that is having an engagement with them. I hate to go there that bluntly, but that is exactly what this is. And this, when I say this on a college campus and some people disagree, or they, when I say that this is the clearest time in American history where we have this division of team reality versus team neurotic fantasy.
Charlie, every mother knows that when you try to breastfeed your baby and you're just getting started and the breasts aren't like fully pumping, like your breasts have to learn how to do it as a young mother.
That's correct.
And there's this terrible moment where you're upset because your baby wants more milk and you're like, I'm failing, I'm not producing it, I'm in a panic. And this is why a lot of moms move to formula sooner than they probably needed to, because they're convinced their breast can't do it. And if you just keep doing it as a mom, as an actual woman, you'll get there. But it's a very difficult situation for mother and baby. And even more so when it's a damn man, when it's a man doing this, trying to pretend that he could ever make the kind of milk that a mother could. This milk, the Daily Mail, to its credit, which is where we found the story, went to actual doctors and interviewed them, who said the CDC has a responsibility to disclose the lack of research and the potential risks here, and pointing out that one of the medications used to force a man to produce milk has been linked to heart issues in babies. Heart issues in babies, not to mention the amount of hormones that baby's going to be drinking in. Most of us won't even have a glass of wine while we're breastfeeding our babies or take a Tylenol, but this is fine. We're going to let the babies get tortured and potentially have heart issues in the name of equity.
And the lack of courage to tell a troubled, neurotic, unstable man that you need mental treatment, not the justification of your delusion. That's the root here, Megan, is that we have a whole regime that is unwilling, that is terrified to look people with mental problems in the eye and say, no, you need help, not the platforming of your fantasy.
Yes, my God. I mean, it's like we've already been chopping up children. We've been sterilizing them.
Yes.
We've been rendering them incapable to ever achieve sexual climax. And now we're going after babies. Now we're going to cause heart issues potentially in newborn babies so that some man can get off. I will leave the audience with this before we take a break. There was just a story. We talked about it with Mark Stein by ITV, a British broadcaster, featuring a transgender woman, meaning a man, as the example of motherhood, breastfeeding, quote unquote, chest feeding a child. This is a lie. This is a man. He cannot chest feed or breastfeed. And somebody did a deep dive into this guy. He's on the internet with nipple clamps repeatedly before this, Charlie, like actual like clothespins, like clamps down on his nipples because he gets off on it. This is a guy getting off on a baby suckling on his nipples.
That's correct.
And held up by a broadcaster as an example of motherhood. It's got to stop. Your word is perfect. It's evil. It's evil. And if this doesn't motivate you to speak out against this nonsense, nothing will.
This customer fears that either bill payers or taxpayers will end up picking up the tab.
The idea that we're going to have even greater water bills, soaring bills, at a time of prices already being hiked, we have to pay a lot for food. That's tough if you're a mum like me, already struggling to get the things that my kid needs.
Customers rightly want the lowest possible pollution, but also the lowest bills for Thames Water and the entire sector. That's creating a financial fault line. Chris Choi, News at 10.
So this is the crux of it. ITV and the Brits, who, have luckily reversed course on their full steam ahead agenda of transing every single British child that they can possibly, they put a stop to that, but they have not stopped shoving this in everyone's face and trying to pass off this man as a woman who is a struggling mother and who is an example of an everyday mom just trying to pay the water bill, and, will have this rubbish on their TV screens of this man showing a shot of him washing a breast pump. His big man hands with nail varnish on while doing the dishes in the sink, and a breast pump. Exactly right. Okay? This is what ITV wants to push onto you. And this is the person, okay, the delusional person who is, their Twitter is like chock a block full of horrifying takes from the stuff of nightmares, okay? An example right here, ranting and raving about how people don't want to accept him as a struggling mom who just wants to breastfeed his kids, while getting off, as Megyn Kelly so blatantly showed examples of him with disgusting contraptions on his nipples, that provide him sexual pleasure. Now he's using a baby to provide that for him. I mean, it's there's no words. I really have exhausted every single word for my disgust for this. But here's just one example of a hot take on this man's Twitter, who has blocked everyone from replying except for the people that he follows or mentions. So basically, this was the picture. In the end, I only breastfed my child for a few weeks. Then I had to stop because I had cancer relapse and didn't want to poison my child, more so than he already was, with all of the drugs that he had to take to induce his chemical lactation that God only knows what is in that secretion that is coming out of his man boobies, okay? And here is him on the bus to the hospital for his first round of chemo, getting off one last time to this newborn baby, which God only knows where this child came from, doing unholy things, okay? I don't even want to show this picture for much longer, okay? So ultimately, the weird hate that I face these past days is a distraction from the real fight. Okay, and what is the real fight? Water companies are ripping us off. Inflation soared with corporate profiteering. Real wages have fallen. Austerity has robbed us of safety nets. Nature and climate collapse is here. Oh, so you're a climate person too? Well, no wonder why I loathe you. So this will wrap it up just with a bow on top. That's the real fight. Women, black people, disabled people, queers, workers, and especially those in the intersections face the biggest burden. Creating a safe, just, more equal society now and for our children. It's not easy, but it's possible. So where do you insert yourself as a white male with a mental disability? You must be a disabled person because you're not a woman, you're not a black person. I don't know what queer, if that describes you or not, but the fact that this person's trying to like veil this tweet with the fact that he's in one of these groups, and the fact that like these are the only groups that are facing a burden on society. What about white males? What about black males? What about males in general? What about immigrants? You left them out. I mean, hello? What is it? Bigot? I don't even know what to call you. I mean, it's ridiculous that he would try to lump himself in with women to this degree and this level of absolute absurdity and this level of delusion. It's breathtaking, to be quite frank. So, and you know who else is very much sick of the woke bullshit? Well, it is actually the Muslims, okay? Funny enough, another group that is supposed to be exclusive to the left, right? They're supposed to be, on the side of the woke leftist progressives, and turns out they're not so down with being shoved all of this disgusting queer agenda in their faces and the faces of their children. Turns out they're a little PO'd, and this has been building upon itself, and it's actually finally kind of starting to come to a head. And I want to just read and show you guys this article. Hundreds of Maryland parents protest lessons they say offend their faiths. Okay, hundreds of parents demonstrated outside the Montgomery County Board of Education's meeting Tuesday, demanding that Maryland's largest school district allow them to shield their children from books and lessons that contain LGBTQ characters. The crowd was filled largely with Muslims and Ethiopian Orthodox parents who say the school system is violating their religious rights protected under the First Amendment by not providing an opt-out. 3 families had filed a lawsuit against the school system. So here's just a little footage from that event.
Montgomery County, Maryland, are protesting the school district's policy that would prohibit parents from opting their children out of classes and books that discuss topics like sexuality and gender.
We demand all towns! We demand all towns! We demand all towns! We demand all towns!
And this is a group of Democrats. This is largely people who typically would vote more liberal, but they are upset because this is being shoved down everyone's throats and onto people's children, and it's finally enough. It really is, on so many different people. And the crazy part is that this hasn't even really hit everyone, okay? It hasn't even really, gotten to all of the different corners of this country there's still people completely unaware that this is even happening. And that is what is so sad. And I mean, people just really need to be more invested in what is going on in their communities. And then here we have the, masked up, vaccinated, I'm sure, people who came out to support the school systems policy that states that we can just shove whatever sexualized material covering whatever it is we deem necessary into your child's face. Okay, so that's the group, like I said, look at this teeny tiny bubble high masked up freaks. And then all of these people who are just religious, regular, everyday people, many Muslims, many, like they said, Ethiopian Orthodox Christians, Christians of all different nationalities are coming together to say enough is a freaking enough, okay? So it's just, I mean, the chickens have come home to roost, okay? Here's another article from Catholic News Agency. Maryland law requires that school districts allow parents to opt out of coursework that deals with family life and human sexuality. However, the school district decided in March that it does not consider reading materials that discuss subjects related to homosexuality, transgenderism, and other aspects of gender ideology to be a part of family life and human sexuality instruction. So what do they consider to be part of? For this reason, beginning on May 1st, the school district no longer notifies parents of such material in the coursework and will not allow them to opt out. So what is this, like fundamental teaching to them, to Maryland School District? What is it, Montgomery County? What do y'all think that this is teaching? If not family life and human sexuality. Okay, transgenderism, really? So, you hate to see it, but you also love to see it if you are on the side of truth and if you are on the side of, being able to raise your own children the way that you see necessary and favoring a more sane and a more appropriate culture in this country, a more God and family focused culture, if you will. It's really not that hard to see where the line was crossed and how far we've actually come. And I have news for you, it's way too far. And the fact that people are still not even aware is crazy to me. So I'll let Jen Psaki tell you all about how, these Muslims, yeah, they're not actually speaking for themselves in this circumstance. They're being used as a political pawn in the anti-trans strategy of the GOP. It's a real big word salad, and she's going to use a lot of terminology that's going to probably make your brain hurt. So just fair warning.
The GOP is trying to recruit Muslim Americans, a community that makes up less than 2% of the U.S. population, against another tiny marginalized group of Americans, transgender people. It's important to remember that back in 2011, during the Republican primary, the right wing had designated Muslim Americans as public enemy number one. No surprise, given that conspiracy theorists, remember the birthers? I do, had been trying for years to portray President Obama as a Trojan horse for Sharia law. Now fast forward 8 years, and the right wing has focused their fear-mongering on trans people. And who better to go after the new enemy than the old enemy? Let's be clear. This is the same old GOP playbook, another cynical ploy to tear at the fabric of our society and damage the idea that out of many, we are one, all because they want so desperately to regain the White House.
Oh, is that right?
She's the worst. She's the worst person in the world. Huge, skank, terrible. But thank you. It means a lot.
Whitey is at it again. It's the whites trying to pit the loving Muslims who have always been pro-LGBTQ against the poor trans people.
So, as you can see here, they're trying to cover it in this veil of, whites are just, we are so clever and we are so adept at, trickery and, pulling the wool over people's eyes that we have somehow subverted the religion of Islam and turned those people against their true beliefs of loving and accepting gay people. That this is why you're seeing this outrage from the Muslim community. I guarantee you that's not it. It's another example of the left eating itself. And they don't want to accept that. They don't want to accept that they've pushed a little too far and they've pushed on the wrong people. And they're scared shitless now. And another example of this them trying to blame white people instead of realizing their mistakes and how far they've tried to push everyone, instead of just, maybe doing a little self-reflecting. No, they want to actually blame now white people for the affirmative action decision that came down from the Supreme Court that basically struck down that policy and said that it is not okay for universities to be discriminating based on race. And how are they doing this? Well, they're saying that the white man, conservatives, the GOP, whatever you want to call it, Republicans, Trumpers, MAGAs, have subverted the Asian community, and we have just pulled the wool over their eyes, even though they are some of the most intelligent, high IQ people, some of the most successful people that come to this country as immigrants and actually elevate their children and their families to, wealth and become very productive members of our society and actually integrate. Well, we've tricked them and used them for our own benefit to get rid of affirmative action. I mean, how many different ways can these people twist themselves into this logic? So from NPR, affirmative action divided Asian Americans and other people of color. Here's how. How? Tell me. In 2015, Edward Bloom, the conservative activist behind the push to end affirmative action, stood in front of a group of a dozen or so, mostly Chinese Americans, in a conference room in Houston. He was introduced by the Houston Chinese Alliance, David Cow, or I don't know how you say that, David C., who prefaced Bloom's presentation with a quote from George Orwell. Very fitting. Bloom is not a lawyer, but according to the ACLU, he has a long history of crafting legal attacks on civil rights. Bloom had first cast two white women, most notably Abigail Fisher, to craft lawsuits intended to end affirmative action, but those didn't go anywhere. So, so what can we do? The two white women's cases obviously didn't go anywhere because why? I wonder why. Probably because people don't see white people as being victimized in any way in this country. They see them as, just, I don't even know what. Like, there's no possibility ever for them to have any sort of case for discrimination or case for grievances. So their case didn't go anywhere because, obviously two white women, they're privileged. They have white woman privilege, right? And so Bloom, this sneaky guy started rubbing his hands together and saying, how can we trick the Asians to do our bidding for us, right? This is what they're alleging. I needed plaintiffs, he told the group. I needed Asian plaintiffs. This was a deliberate switch in strategy, says Ian Haney Lopez, a race and constitutional law scholar at Berkeley. Wow, what a job that is. The argument was no longer centered on how affirmative action impacts white people. Instead, there's this move to strengthen the surface argument that this is racism against minorities. I think that's part of the appeal. Asians were standing in as proxies for white students. That's essentially the strategy that Ed Bloom used. And it's just another example of how the left is starting to eat itself, and they have to twist themselves into knots to basically argue their points or keep their points even alive because it is breaking down. People are starting to see everything for what it is, and affirmative action needed to end. All of this bullshit about how people are victims and people are oppressors, it all has to stop. I mean, this country is going to self-implode, and that's what I would argue some of these people want, and that is the reason for what we see now. So this headline from NBC News, which they're not going to let me read, is perfect. Some Asian Americans say affirmative action ruling used the group as pawns. The white supremacist agendas behind these lawsuits use the small number of Asian Americans against affirmative actions as pawns in their efforts. Okay, so they got a group of Asians to basically refute the points of the others and say that, yeah, we were used. The mean old conservatives, they tricked us. Well, I would argue, no the fuck, no one tricked nobody. But at this point where we're at in this country, it has to stop, the finger pointing. Because if we want to come out of this alive and we want this country to survive, it's really gotten to the point where you are either on the side of truth and transparency and being, aligned with, we're Americans, we're all Americans, and if you want to make this country better, if you want to do what's right and thrive in this amazing country that we have the opportunity to live in, then you need to, basically get with the program or sit the fuck down, honestly. Or else we're going to end up like France has ended up.
And your take on what is actually behind this, 5 days of protest here?
I mean, ultimately, Megan, the death of this 17-year-old guy, if you are told by a police officer, I'm sure even in America as well as Britain, we agree on this, that if you are told by an armed officer of the law not to drive off in your vehicle, then you should not drive off in your vehicle. And what's happened now, I think the death of this young guy is being used as an excuse to loot, to destroy, to burn, and to steal. And there can be no justification for that much of a breach, a breakdown of the rule of law. Because ultimately, Megan, if you live in France, if you want to live in France, you ought to accept the French way of life. It's the same if you want to live in Britain. And we have a southern border problem in the same way that the United States of America does. And it all comes down to this fundamental point for me. It's a fundamental failure of multiculturalism across the West. Because, Megan, I don't know if it struck you, but it's an intriguing paradox that France is labelled as some kind of racist hellhole, and that's why there is this level of rioting on the streets today. But if France really is this racist hellhole that some claim it to be, why do we witness a flood of individuals from North Africa and elsewhere flocking to France's shores, to Europe and to Britain and elsewhere? Racial inequality is being used, as I say, as a convenient excuse to engage in criminal behaviour, wanton acts such as stealing, burning and destroying property. Because, Megan, I'm no expert, but ransacking Louis Vuitton ain't going to solve the ghettoisation of certain French communities. So this is an excuse. We saw it in America, and the BML riots that went on then, the looting, the stealing, the wanton acts of criminality. It's being used as an excuse in France. The rule of law has broken down. But I'm afraid it leads to the same conclusion, which is that in France, the flood of mass migration into Europe and the so-called multiculturalism and diversity that we're told is all so precious and the strength of our nations, it ain't working, folks. That's the be-all and end-all.
And that's where most of the riots have taken place. We showed video a little while ago of protesters out by the Champs-Élysées, but that's the exception. For the most part, this has been happening in those neighborhoods where those immigrants live. And, these are not great neighborhoods. I mean, we've seen these if you come into Paris from Charles de Gaulle Airport.
And I would argue these people have absolutely no flipping right to be doing what they are doing. I don't care. These illegal immigrants, I mean, they can fuck around and find out in this country about this. Try to do this. Try to burn our cities. It was one thing when BLM did it in the summer of 2020. Those were citizens and people thought they had a legit grievance. There are people who aren't even citizens, who are illegal immigrants, who have flooded these countries in Europe. These European white countries, and are now using this one instance as a means to an ends to burn, riot, loot stores, and to air out their grievances with the way that a criminal died at the hands of the police. It is absolutely unreal what is going on in France. And the mainstream media, if you look at some of these headlines, they want you to believe that this is all about, the police brutality and how could the police have shot this young man, and these are just like French people who are coming together with immigrants. No, this has reached a boiling point, and the French are sick of it. So they are rioting, the French, in the streets against all of this, absolute madness from these illegal immigrants who are tearing their cities to shreds, who are burning very, old and important buildings, rioting, looting in their stores that they have worked to create, that they have actually had as part of their livelihoods. These people come in and destroy. That's all they know how to do. If you cannot assimilate to the culture that you are moving to, if you're moving from your home country for a quote-unquote better life, even though I don't even believe in that. I don't even believe in economic immigration. You should, if you want to be an economic immigrant, apply for a freaking visa or apply for a green card to whatever country you want to go to. Do not do it the illegal way. Illegal immigration is illegal for a reason. And it's because these people have no care or consideration for the law or even for the countries that they are trying to invade. And that's what it is. It's an invasion. And you can see this is the ends to that means, okay? Destruction. They bring their problems to the countries that they're moving to. They bring their strife. They bring their issues. And people are sick of it. And this is the root cause of all of the strife that is going on in France. And we are in for every bit of this. If we don't wake up and realize what's going on, I'm not saying that, no one can ever immigrate to the U.S. ever again. But if you want to be here, if you want to come here, you have to assimilate and become American. We don't need foreign flags flying in the streets of our cities. Okay, it's one thing to hang on to your culture and your country that you moved from. If you have a special place in your heart for it, that's fine. Keep your flag inside or, hang it somewhere else. There should never be a foreign flag or a pride flag, for that matter, flying on anyone's front doorstep as if this is not the United States of freaking America, okay? It's enough. And this is what it's come to. Another example of these policies creating utter destruction. And, this is what we're facing in this country.
You'll see it's crazy the way a lot of these immigrants are living. But France is largely socialist in its policies. It's like, how much more help can there be? The safety net in France is pretty significant. They want more. They want more things from the French people and the French government, but they're not assimilating into the culture there. That's not to say anything about this particular 17-year-old, but the divisions are growing. This is a failed experiment of taking just masses from other countries who have really no interest in living comfortably as French citizens. They want their own culture to start to dominate, and the hostilities are brewing, which is behind at least some of what we're seeing.
Absolutely, Megan. I mean, I've just watched a video with a group of fighting age young men at sea with Richard Gere. Now, Gere was arguing that we must support immigration to Europe, mass migration to Europe. It's useful idiots, I'm afraid, and Hollywood lovies like Richard Gere that are actually helping people smugglers and causing problems in Britain.
And he needs to go his fucking ass home. Ridiculous. Advocating for policy change and for things he knows nothing about from a country that he's not even living in or from. Shame.
And in France and the rest of Europe. We here in Britain, for example, like in America, that southern border migration is, well, one, it's illegal, but ultimately I don't ever think we should be accepting people. And I think France, many people in France feel the same way. It's why you're seeing a rise in support for the likes of Marine Le Pen. Because if you accept someone arriving illegally and say, look, we'll give you everything you ask for, we'll give you your bed, board and benefits, it shows wanton disregard for the laws of our land and, frankly, the ability to disregard law and order. So I say no thanks, and I make no apologies for that, Megan. The British media, the politicians across the left, and most politicians in Britain, if you say things like this, you are dismissed as being some kind of far-right, swivel-eyed bigot. But actually, Britain has a severe housing crisis. Our healthcare system is allowing many unnecessary deaths because we have a nutty socialist system in Britain and it cannot cope with the sheer number and volume post-lockdown. And we don't have enough teachers or school places. Britain and France cannot be the end destinations for every single economic migrant. And that's what they are, Megan, that want to come here. And nor do I think actually does the West have, or Europe have, a responsibility to the millions upon millions of people that would quite like to come to these economies over their host nations, their home nations. So we're seeing these tensions build up. And I actually predict, and this is an unhappy prediction actually, but I predict that similar things are going to happen here in the United Kingdom as well. Because we already see disputes on the streets of London over issues like the Iranian regime. We see in places like Leicester, we see disputes between Muslims and the Leicester Sikh community, for example, who are basically importing disputes from India, disputes from Iran, and bringing them into British life. And we're saying, hang on a minute. If you come here, you accept that you're a British citizen. We don't want that kind of drama being imported into this country. We've got enough
There's a reason your culture has evolved to where it has, thanks to generations of Brits who have chosen to live a certain way. Why would you just say, okay, we'll do it your way from your country where we never chose to live, none of our ancestors chose to live. We've been living under totally different standards and with totally different cultural values. You assimilate to us or go back home.
Exactly, beautifully put. I mean, were I to turn up in the United States of America tomorrow, Megan, and say, look,
Yeah, I love that for Meg. I mean, my God, she's spitting bars lately. I mean, I don't know, man. There's been a change that I've seen in the past few months for Megyn Kelly, and I love to see it. I really do. And that's the thing. Britain is full, France is full, Ireland's full, America is full. Unless you want to come here to assimilate, to improve on the country and uphold the values that we have started with and that we intend to end with, then you can really stay where you're at in your shithole country. And I'm sorry if that sounds mean or rude or whatever. I mean, it's the fact of the matter. You know, our resources are dwindling just like Britain's are. You know, there's not enough to help everyone if people don't want to help themselves, and it's only going to drive us into the likes of socialism, communism, and poverty and utter despair. And this is the kind of thing that kind of scares me about Medicare for all. I put a poll on my YouTube community tab about, you know, Medicare for all, because I'm curious about it, and I think that if certain tweaks were made, that that could be a winning issue for the GOP, but there would have to be like massive changes to the tax policies, and there would have to be massive deportations of non-taxpayers in order for anyone on the conservative side to even begin to consider it. But at the same time, I hear of all these horror stories and all of these woes and gripes that people who do have socialized medicine have, and it doesn't look very pretty. But at the same time, you know, I'm speaking more specifically about Canada and Great Britain. They have a very bad system because of all of the bullshit that they, you know, allow to go on. I mean, France does have a little bit better of healthcare, socialized medicine system there, but it's still like at the brink of collapse, I feel like, at any given moment, because of all of the people who are flooding these different countries. So it's a major issue, and people don't want to, they don't want to see it. They don't want to look at it. They don't want to even discuss it.
More British.
Exactly, absolutely right. And that's what the kind of rhetoric, that's what we should be saying sternly, frankly, openly, honestly to these people that come here and don't have any regard for the British way of life or the French way of life, and actually just want to stir up trouble and resentment and demand more and more. We have it pretty good, and actually we'd like to keep it pretty good. And we're seeing those tensions start to tear away at the social fabric and actually the constitutional fabric in certain regards, for certain respects. And if you, basically, Megan, look, if I was in charge, I would say, you can't speak the language, you come here illegally, you have no regard for the law and order, for our way of life, then sod off, if I can use a British expression, because we have absolutely no time and no place for you. Love diversity, unless it's the diversity of thought. And it just makes a mockery. You know, tomorrow you're celebrating your nation's freedom and independence. And actually, that freedom and independence, you know, my grandfather served with Americans in 1952 in the Korean War. Now, he was fighting for the values that the United States represent and the United Kingdom represent, of freedom, of democracy, freedom from communist tyranny, freedom from oppression, when actually now we're making a mockery of the sacrifice that brave men and frankly boys have offered to protect not the United States of America, but to protect freedom elsewhere too. The flag used to represent a beacon of hope, aspiration, freedom, liberty, all of these really important things that aren't just slogans. They mean something, they're tangible, they must be protected, and they have been protected with lives, with sacrifice. And now we air people and say they're brave, Megan. Brave? Are they brave like those boys that froze to death in Korea, who had icicles hanging off of their fingers? Are they brave like the mothers who didn't get to see their children come home because boys were fighting in foreign lands for the values that the United States flag represents? How dare you say that these people are brave? How dare you give them a platform and use the word brave like that? It is not brave to say that you are Arthur one day and Martha the next. Don't be so ridiculous, condescending, and patronizing.
And think about the position this puts the others in. That's the thing. Is like they're given no choice but to sit there like, okay, yes, we support, we see, we believe. You know, they have other things they need to be worried about. This is such a distraction to any person who is part of the mainstream. I mean, the vast majority of Americans would be very uncomfortable next to this male one day, female the next, who now we have to call by a new name and ignore the lipstick on. And this is at a time when our military recruitment is at record lows. There was a great piece in The Spectator today by Lou Aguilar. I recommend it to everybody. I tweeted it if you want to get it, but you can go to spectator.org. And Lou writes, he says, okay, the following, hold on. Yeah. He says, of course, America bashing education alone, because he railed about that, about how you go to school today and all you hear is about how bad America is, has not dampened young men's pro-military fervor. The current sad, woke state of the Biden administration's Pentagon leadership is equally, if not more, off-putting. Whereas boys once idolized Generals Washington, Jackson, Grant, Pershing, Roosevelt, and Patton, and Admirals Perry and Nimitz, all they now see are pathetic losers like General Mark White Rage Milley and Lloyd Where's My Mask Austin, now the Secretary of Defense, not to mention the best-known admiral, who is Rachel Levine, formerly known as Richard,
yes.
Who's, you know, now they're supposed to look up to this and see this as a reason to join the military. It's not happening. And that's why we're at record lows now on military recruitment. The numbers are the Army missed its recruitment goals by 25% in 22. In 23, it's projected to be 15,000 soldiers short. Similarly, the Navy expected to miss its target by 10,000 this year.
So it's just, it's a big joke at this point. The United States has utterly exhausted our fair share of clown world bullshit that we are trying to exude onto everyone. And I think we're in for a rude awakening. And you know, I think a lot of people are going to be sadly woken up from their ignorant slumber into a hellish landscape that we now face because of all of this and all of the bullshit that we've put up with for as long as we have. And I don't think people really understand the scope of it either. So, yikes, okay? We must push on. And the last thing that I will leave you with is a funny clip from the Fresh and Fit podcast, and it's featuring Nick Fuentes, guys. I will leave this link in the description. I would definitely suggest you guys go and check it out because it was hilarious. But basically, the media has tried to also slander and portray this person as a racist, anti-Semite, you know, white national, every bad name you could think of, he's been labeled it. But he's been getting a little bit more traction as people have, like I said, come to their senses. People have been kind of seeing the truth, getting red pilled, getting out from this woke haze. And so he's been being welcomed in different spaces and in more diverse and you know, platforms that he would have never had a couple years ago after the Capitol riot. You know, he's being welcomed into these places, and one of these has been the Fresh and Fit podcast. Specifically, Myron from Fresh and Fit has kind of really gotten on board with Nick and a lot of his views. But this episode in particular was hilarious, in this part that I'm fixing to play. I want to know your guys' thoughts, and it has to do with the quote-unquote N-word, okay, guys? So, if you're reading from Huck Finn, who is, which is a book that it famously says this word in its texts, you know, people have gotten canceled just for reading from this book. That is ridiculous to me. And so, no, I don't suggest everyone just start using it willy-nilly and in everyday life or society, but I don't think that people should be shunned, or people should be shamed, or, you know, eliminated from society for saying a word, especially if they don't mean it in the context of hate or discrimination against a race of people. So in this situation here, long story short, Nick was on this panel, and this is like the third hour of 4 that he had been sitting with this group, has discussed many different ideas, and like I said, I'll put it in the description if you guys want to watch the whole thing. And so they've been talking for a while now, and they get on the topic of the N-word. And so let me just let you guys, we'll end it with this. This is I thought this was hilarious, and the reaction from the group of ladies, who, these two guys are the hosts of this show, if you're not familiar with it, and they always have on a guest, and then usually they'll do like a panel with like a bunch of, you know, just regular everyday women who most of the time are not political and don't really know much about much of anything besides their Instagram accounts and their little bubble that they live in. So it makes for funny content and good conversation, and it's just very entertaining to watch. So this is the reaction to this little topic that comes up.
In the future, the BBC is stashing up all the big booty white girls.
Oh, God.
Sorry, Nick. Sorry, Nick.
Not if I can help it.
And before this, context a little bit behind that is that he has basically said that he believes that white people should marry white people and that other races should marry their own within their own race. There were several black girls on this panel who actually agreed with him and said that they would never date white people, actually talked more disparagingly about white people than Nick ever did about any other race. He was just saying that he's proud of his race and he wants to continue the white race and to see it thrive. I don't think there's anything wrong with it. I agree with him wholeheartedly.
Stop it. Shots Eminem for hosting Nick on my B-Day. Nick, would you say that you have a lot of support from a Black/Hispanic audience? And if so, how come? Unfortunately, missed out on the rally tickets to see for myself.
Yeah, blacks love me because I'm honest.
Blacks love me.
Yeah.
You keep saying black.
Yes.
I love them too.
Right? Blacks.
I love them.
No, we don't believe you, bro.
How should you refer to y'all? How should you refer to blacks then? How should you refer to
You don't want to hear my second choice.
Oh, yeah.
His face. But yet, like, black people can refer to white people as, you know, bleach monkeys or crackers or, you know, whatever it is they call us, like, you know, YT people on Twitter. There's, you know, a plethora of different terminologies that black people are allowed to use for white people, but they get triggered and upset when he says blacks. What is wrong with that? There's blacks and there's whites. Like, he's not, I mean, it's equal. It's equal. It's okay for black people to capitalize the B in black, but if you try to capitalize the W in white, you're a racist bigot who should be taken out of society. It's the double standard for me, guys, and y'all let me know, please.
It's a joke.
It's funny. You should actually do stand up sometime. Maybe it would actually take off.
Maybe.
I think she's joking.
Okay. No.
I hope so.
Do it, Nick. Do it. No, I can't.
How could it
That would be implied.
do it, Nick, so you can get banned again.
Well, you can say it.
Yeah. Say it. Come on, man. I want you to say it.
For real. Hey, what you got?
You want me to say it?
Yes.
Is anyone going to hit me if I say it?
No. Let's go. 2 hours. Come on, Nick. What you got?
All encouraging.
Nigger.
Look at the faces. Look at the face. Myron's dying over here. These bitches don't even know. They were like not expecting this white man to say this word. And I mean, like, it's funny in this context because he's being encouraged by all these black people to do it. And it's like, you want me to say it? Okay, I'll say it. Because guess what? It's a word. And if you are hurt to the point of being crippled and a victim that needs now to be taken care of and coddled because you heard a word that is used in like rap songs multiple times over and in everyday life by most black people, I don't know where that logic comes from. You know, and like I said, I don't say the word. I would never say it unless I was reading from a text that had the word included in it, or I don't even know. Like, I mean, I feel uncomfortable like just saying that I would say it in a discussion because I think it's an ugly word, and we have been ingrained with that. But a lot of you know, like red pill gang, whatever, conservative influencers like Sneeko the other day posted something about it on his Twitter. Like, if you know, the N-word is a cucked way of like censoring yourself. It's self-censorship, and if you don't mean it in a hateful, harmful way, and you're just saying it in terms of a discussion, and what is the issue? Like, any other word you can say. Any other word you can say besides that one. And you can see from their reaction. I mean, it's just, it's so funny to me, it defies logic.
Oh yeah, ban them now.
She says ban him now.
It's okay.
Not a saying nigga.
He said it again. Just in general, what are your thoughts on that topic itself? It's a hot button one, guys, but I think it's important. And just like any other topic of conversation that we have in our society, it's important to have these discussions and to hash out these opinions. And nobody should be disparaged or made to feel bad for having an opinion that is less popular or not mainstream. Okay, we still have freedom of speech in this country, last time I checked. But you guys, let me know in the comments, please, down below. Please like this video also if you guys liked it, and follow the channel, subscribe, guys, go follow me on Twitter, do all of the sorts, and I would very much appreciate that. And until next time, guys, I will see y'all later. Bye.
I just tell the truth, and telling the truth is crazy in a world full of lies. If you mix brilliance with bravery, that we can ignite something. Even this conversation alone can ignite the people.
The time is now to express and for people to believe in themselves. The time is now for it to be okay to be great. People in this world shun people for being great, for being a bright color, for standing out. But the time is now to be okay to be the greatest you.